Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Anisa Azhari. I'm from K3 2019. So in this video, I'm going to present you a material about recount text. Before we start, I'm going to give you the description about what we will learn in this presentation. There are 6 topics we will talk about in this presentation. The first one is the definition of recount text, the purpose of recount text, the text structure, language features, types, and the examples of each types of recount text. Okay, so we start from the first one, the definition and the purpose of recount text. What is recount text actually? Recount text is a text which retells events or experiences happened in the past. It could be the writer's experiences, the writer's friends, it could be anyone's experiences. And then what is the purpose or the goal of recount text? It is to entertain or inform the reader about what happened in the past. Next, we move on to the text structure of a recount text. There are 3 structures of recount text. The first one is orientation. It tells us about the scene setting of the story. For example, it was in June when I chose to move to a new apartment. So it provides us the time setting of the story, which is in June. And then the second one is the events. It tells us about what happened in the past in chronological order. For example, the first person to arrive was Anisa, and then the next one was Bobby. After Bobby came, we went to Alex's house together with Bobby's car. So yeah, and then the last one is reorientation. It is optional to write reorientation in your recount text. It is basically a closing statement of a recount text. It could be the moral of the story. It could be the writer's feeling about the story. For example, I hope I can go to the park again next week. It was fun. So from the example, it provides us about the writer's feeling about the story. Next, we move to the language features of a recount text. As you can see in the presentation, there are 4 language features used in recount text. We will talk about the first one. The text is written in simple past tense and past continuous tense. You can see the example for simple past tense. I saw Fred in town. And then for the past continuous tense, I was living abroad in 1987. The next language features is that the text uses action verbs such as went, stayed, work, run, etc. For example, I stayed at my grandma's house last summer. He went back to his house to get the important files he accidentally left. And then we move on to the third example, which is the text uses conjunctions such as when, after, later, then, etc. You can see the example. After we called Alex, we went to his house immediately. And then the last language feature is that the text uses adverbs of time, such as on Monday, in July, this morning. For example, I spoke to him this morning. Next, we move on to the types of recount text. There are 4 types of recount text. The first one is personal recount text. It tells us about someone's personal experiences, such as their experiences when they are going on vacation, at school, etc. And then the second one is imaginative recount text. It tells us about the writer's imagination, which is written in past tense. And then the third one is factual recount text. It tells us about factual events happened in the past. And then the last one is historical recount text. It tells us about historical things or famous people in the past. It could be the biography of Bung Karno, the history of Candi Borobudur, etc. Next, I have provided you with the examples of each type of recount text. The first one is personal recount text. I will give you 3 minutes to read the text and decide which one is the orientation, the events, or the reorientation, if there is any in this text. Okay, so Yeah, the orientation in this text is the first paragraph, which is, I had a silly experience when I was at senior high school. One day I was sent from English class. I feel bored with the teacher and that never innovated his way of teaching. This paragraph provides us the time setting of the story, which is in when the writers was at senior high school, and then the events was from the I knew he was too old and soon blah blah blah. The paragraph tells us about the story. And then the last one is reorientation. I was really embarrassed at that moment, and after that, I never absent in his class. So the reorientation tells about the writer's feeling about the experiences he had. Next, the imaginative recount example. I have provided you with the orientation, events, then the reorientation. I will give you 3 minutes to read the text. If you ever wondered what is the difference between narrative text and imaginative recount text, basically in imaginative recount text, the main role of the text is the writer himself. Meanwhile, in narrative text, the main role is someone else. In imaginative recount text, it tells us about the writer's imagination. For example, like in this text, the writer was dreaming about him being a superhero. So yeah, next, the example of factual recount example. The text is about the tragedy, the Titanic tragedy in 1912. So yeah, you can read the text carefully. Okay, so we're going to talk about this picture. Is anyone know who is this girl? If no one knows who she is, let me tell you about her. Her name is Anneliese Mary Frank, who is known for Anne Frank. She was a German-Dutch diarist of Jewish origin. So basically, she was one of the most discussed Jewish victims, and she is famous for her diary during World War II, which is in 1942 and until 1944. Okay, so for historical recount text, we are going to talk about Anne Frank's biography. So that's why I provide you that picture before. So yeah, you can read the text. If you have read the text, you can see that I have provided you with the parts of the orientation, the events, or the orientation of the biography. So if you have any, okay, so basically that's all for me. If you have any questions, you may ask. Okay, so that's all for me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.